Hi there, welcome back to this week's podcast episode, which is titled Be Careful Who You Listen to. Now, I really wanted to cover this topic because I believe this topic is something that we all encounter within our business. And it doesn't matter whether you're new and you're eager and you're just starting out, or whether you've been established in your business for decades, there will always be somebody who wants to offer you a piece of advice or who wants to offer you some criticism. Now, remember, I'm coming at this from an aesthetic background, but I do believe that this principle applies to any service-based business from any background. I think what makes us more susceptible to this is when we've come from a big organisation such as the NHS. We're usually surrounded by quite a large team. And should we encounter any problems, or we just want to turn to somebody for a piece of advice, or we might be struggling with something, there's usually somebody that we know and we trust within that team that we can turn to. Or there may be somebody in the team that's more experienced, has been through something that you're struggling with, that can usually offer you advice. But when you go into a service-based business, again, I'm coming from the aesthetics world, you often start out as a lone practitioner and you're often wearing many hats. So you can be the practitioner, the accountant, the marketer, the receptionist, and suddenly you've got all these decisions to make. You might have new problems and it can feel quite isolating because it's difficult to know who to trust and where you can turn to. You know, you may be struggling with a quite difficult client, a problematic client, and you just need somebody to offload to, which is normal. You know, that's human nature. So what we tend to do is we'll tend to turn to our partners, our family members, our friendships, but it tends to be people that aren't in the field that we're in and that aren't going through what we're going through. And again, it's a normal human response to want to give advice and to want to offer a solution, particularly if it's partners or it's family and it's close friends, because hopefully these people care about you and they only want the best for you. But I just want you to be aware that the advice that they give might not be the best advice that you need to make wise business decisions. Some solutions might be brilliant, but I want you to really strip it back and take it back more to business decisions. And just to give examples that are non-business related, would you go for financial advice from somebody who isn't demonstrating some level of financial freedom or financial abundance? Would you go to someone for health advice who isn't demonstrating health in all forms? Would you go to somebody for relationship advice who's displayed evidence of destructive relationships? The same applies to business advice. So whilst family, whilst friends, whilst partners mean well, and I'm sure that their intentions are good and their intentions are genuine, I want you to be able to kind of separate yourself from that emotionally and logically ask yourself, is that person able to demonstrate that they've achieved the outcome that I'm desiring? Can they walk the walk? Have they been through this situation before? Because whilst these intentions and these words of wisdom and this advice is lovely, people can only meet you where they're at. So they can only offer wisdom from the things that they've truly experienced. And this is why it's super important to really only absorb advice and criticism from somebody who has walked the walk, who has been through what you've been through, who has come out of the other side and can really demonstrate and offer living proof of the outcomes that you're truly desiring. And I think criticism can be a really, really difficult one to take. Sometimes we might misread a situation. We might have somebody that visits us for a treatment and then goes elsewhere, and we begin to take that personally. We begin to make up our own narrative about it without necessarily knowing the true narrative. And one of the best quotes that really, really helped me with this and really helped to give me a level of internal strength was this following quote, which I want to read out to you because it really helped me at the time with regards to criticism. And it's a quote by Theodore Roosevelt from his 1910 speech, The Man in the Arena. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who, at the best, knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who, at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly. And I cannot tell you how much that quote helped me, especially in the beginning stages. And it made me realise that, I'm not going to take criticism or negativity from somebody who isn't in the arena. I will only take constructive advice and words of wisdom from somebody else who is in the arena, or somebody else who's been in that arena, who has come out of the other end, who can act as a guiding light and shine the way. And it helps you kind of move forward with a real sense of pride and sense of strength. So here's a few things that we can do to combat this problem and make sure that we're taking advice from the right kinds of people so that we don't make drastic errors within our business. So suggestion number 1 would be to find a like-minded community. So I'm not just talking about a group of people or a community who are in the same industry as you. I'm talking about finding an aligned community, so like-minded individuals. So if kindness is important to you, if effective leadership is important to you, if morals and integrity are important to you, it's finding a group of people that are aligned with you as a person, as aligned with your personality. Because I can only talk again from experience, but many of the social media Facebook groups, the free Facebook groups, they can be really quite heavily toxic places to be. You can find a lot of keyboard warriors in there. You can find people shooting other people down for asking certain questions. And whilst I can look at that from the outside and see it as it's plain insecurity, it's plain ego, it still doesn't make it a comfortable place and a warm, welcoming place to be able to ask open questions where no question is a stupid question. You want a supportive, nurturing environment. You will tend to find that paid memberships can be a little bit better than free community groups because the paid memberships are really more heavily vetted as to who goes into them. And when people are paying for something, you usually get a different standard and people who just genuinely want to help other people within the group. I would also suggest finding a really good mentor, a really good coach who has walked the walk, who has been through that arena that we've just talked about before you. Someone who can hold the torch and shine the light and show you the way. Someone who's encountered the things that you're now encountering. Someone who's faced the same problems and found ways to overcome those problems. Someone who can show you how not to make costly mistakes. And it has to be somebody that you truly do align with. But the most important thing is they have to be able to walk the walk and demonstrate that they're now living proof of achieving the things that you're desiring. And what I would suggest with family, with friends, when you meet up, you're going to say, oh, how are you doing? How's business doing? And if you're a little bit of an oversharer like me, you'll be like, oh, well, this is going, I feel like this and I feel like that and I'm not sure what to do about this. And try and kind of restrain yourself and hold yourself back a little bit and just make your answers a little bit more vague. So something like, yeah, business is going great, thanks. So that there's nothing that anybody can kind of latch onto and want to then jump on and offer you those words of wisdom. And maybe talk about your wins a little bit more. Because what we tend to do is when we do meet friends and we do meet family, we tend to talk about the problems rather than the wins. And again, I think this is human nature. But when you start to talk about your wins, it kind of reinforces that things are going well in your subconscious. It's really interesting then to see other people's responses. So, really quick one today, but I hope that helped. And again, one last piece of advice, one last quote to leave off with is never absorb criticism from those that you wouldn't ask for advice. And on that note, I shall see you next week. Take care.